Today we are going to be looking at different engine types and configurations commonly seen on motorcycles. I will be going over each type and the pros and cons to each. Before we get too far into this, I want to point out that this is only for the common types, so no, we will not be talking about the rotary engine found in the mid-70s Suzuki RE5. If you want to see a video on odd motorcycle engines, then let me know by hitting that thumbs up button and leaving a comment. We're going to work our way up from the simplest engine out there, and that would be single cylinders. Single cylinder engines, very common, found in most dirt bikes, dual sport supermotos, also smaller beginner economy bikes such as the CBR 250R and scooters. Pros: light and narrow, mechanically simple, good bottom end torque, usually fuel efficient, very easy to work on in most applications, cheap to manufacture, own, and repair. Some of the cons would be lots of vibrations, not as powerful in general compared to multi-cylinder configurations of the same displacement, not usually seen in large displacement engines, and a lack of top end power in most applications. Next we have the parallel twin. Another very common engine configuration where both cylinders are side by side in a parallel configuration. Seen in many beginner-friendly bikes such as the Ninja 250, Ninja 650, and FZ07, and larger dual sport adventure bikes and urban cruisers. Pros: narrow and light, good for general riding and commuting. Generally has a very friendly linear power band. It's fuel efficient, easy to work on, simple and cheap to manufacture, own, and upkeep. Cons: some vibration and lack of lower end torque. Really only suited for smaller displacement engines, less than 800 cc's. Also, they have a lackluster exhaust note in most applications. Next up is inline triples. Fairly uncommon, mostly seen in Triumph sport bikes such as the Street Triple, also seen in the highly raved about Yamaha FZ09. The triple engine configuration is kind of like the parallel, but another one right next to it. Now let's go over the pros, and there are a lot of them. The triple engine is the perfect balance between twins and inline fours. Versatility, works well in all riding situations, has good bottom end torque while retaining some good top end power, also has a very nice unique exhaust sound. Of course, there are some cons. Because of the rarity, they're not quite as refined as the inline 4 engines. Also, they don't rev quite as high as well. And they're not really great at one thing, they're just kind of an overall jack-of-all-trades bike. They don't have a ton of torque down low compared to V-twins, and they don't have a ton of power up top compared to inline 4s. Next up is inline 4s, another common engine found in generally every single Japanese supersport bike, such as my CBR 600RR. The inline 4 is just like the parallel twin and the triple. It has all 4 cylinders in line. Pros: very smooth power delivery, revs quickly, cranks out big horsepower numbers at high RPMs, and it has a screaming engine sound, which I personally love. Cons: not much bottom end grunt compared to other configurations. Also, they are a little bit of a pain to own and maintain because you have 4 spark plugs, you have 4 coils, you have 4 of everything, so it's more valves to adjust, more things to worry about. Next up, we have the inline 6. It's a very rare engine found on bikes such as the Kawasaki K1300 and the Honda CBX. Pros: it looks really cool and it sounds amazing. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of cons with this engine type, and it's very expensive to make and own. It's complicated, very overkill. You lose cornering clearance, and they're heavy because it's so wide. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons why they don't make these anymore. Next up is the V-twin. Finally, we're away from the inlines, and we're talking about V. The difference between an inline engine and a V engine is the V engine has its cylinders opposed from each other at a 45-degree angle, opposed to it being an inline configuration like inline 4s, 3s, and parallel twins. First off, the V-twin, it's very common engine configuration found in nearly every single large cruiser motorcycle, also seen in some sport bikes such as the 1299 Panigale. Pros: great low-end torque and a wide power band, and has an excellent V-twin sound. Cons, they're a little bit more difficult to cool compared to inline applications, and they have some vibration issues. Not quite as powerful as inline 4 engines with the same displacement on the top end, but again, they make up for the top end horsepower with down low torque. Next up is the V4 engine, and I will admit I'm very biased to this motor. This is my favorite engine type. The V4 is a relatively uncommon engine type when you look at the entire motorcycle world, but it is seen in applications such as the Yamaha VMAX, the Honda VFR, and the Aprilia RS-V4. There's a lot of pros of the V4 engine. It has a smooth linear power, great bottom end torque, all the way up to the top end with some great horsepower up top. It has a high performance, better than V-twins in peak horsepower, better than inline 4s in down low torque. It has an amazing sound that, in my opinion, my VFR is the best sounding bike that is out there on the market today. There are a couple cons though. They're expensive to make and they're pretty heavy. Also, there's some difficulties with cooling these engines, and again, they're kind of expensive to maintain, like the inline 4s. Next up is going to be the flat twin, otherwise known as the Boxer engine. Found in many BMWs, with the flat engine configuration, the cylinders are opposed to each other, not at an angle like the V-twin and not in line like the inline 4s. They're opposed, they lay flat down, hence the name flat twin. Pros, they're very torquey and well balanced. They have a great low center of gravity and a linear power band and smooth power delivery, great for shaft-driven motorcycles. However, there are some cons, and the biggest one is that the engine is so wide that it actually takes away your cornering clearance, which can be a big problem for sport bikes. Next up, we have the Flat 4, which is common in Honda Goldwings and the GL1000. It is a great balance and plenty of torque, has the same pitfalls as the Flat Twin, but to a more harsh degree. Also, they're very expensive to make. Flat 6, currently used by Honda in the newer Goldwing and the Honda Valkyrie, very powerful and torquey, but again, they are wide, heavy, and not great for cornering. Next up, we have two-stroke engines, found mainly on dirt bikes and older street bikes. I'm not going to go into the two-strokes too much, but basically just know that you have to mix the oil with the gas. You can't just run straight gas. The pros of this engine configuration, it has an insane power band. Absolute tons of high-end power, ridiculous amounts. They're wheelie machines, torque death traps, sounds awesome. They're super simple to work on and cheap to fix. However, they do have cons. First of all, you have terrible low-end power, practically none. You either have power or you don't. It's like turning on and off a switch. Plus, you have to mix the oil with the gas, which can be a kind of a pain unless you have the newer oil injection systems, which have been known to have reliability issues on a lot of makes and models. They also smoke a lot and are very buzzy. Also bad for the environment, which I'm sure most of you don't care about. And they're not as reliable as four-stroke engines. And finally, the last engine type will be the brand new electric motors that are coming out. Electric is the future, whether you like to admit it or not. I could make a whole video simply on electric motors and their pros and cons, but let's try to keep this short and simple. I don't actually know how they work, but just know there's no cylinders or anything like that. So the pros would be electric has instant torque, right from 0 RPM. Think of like a blender. You turn the blender on and it instantly fires up at full speed. That's kind of like an electric motor. You just instantly have that torque. They also run off electricity, which is cheaper than gas and better for the environment. They are virtually maintenance-free, and in theory, they are much more reliable than gas-powered motors and cheaper to own, since you don't have to worry about engine maintenance costs, such as changing the oil, changing spark plugs, adjusting valves, doing transmission work, nothing. All of that is removed with an electric engine. Some of the cons would be that it's still new tech, so it's expensive to invest in this technology at this point in time in 2018. For one, for me personally, I enjoy using a clutch. I enjoy shifting through gears. Most electric motors don't have that ability. Electric bikes make virtually no noise at all. Just a little whine from the electric motor that you're not even going to hear. You're going to hear the wind noise instead of the bike. I could see myself wanting to own an electric dirt bike so I could ride off-road and not worry about getting the cops called on me and having to worry about it pissing people off. I mean, it'd be a little bit easier to be stealthy with a completely dead silent motorcycle. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is the end. Thank you so much for watching.